Hey guys, it's Libby, and today I am delivering on my promise to review Lady Chatterley's Lover by D.H. Lawrence. The book is set in England in the 1920s, and it's about Lady Constance Chatterley. She marries Sir Clifford Chatterley in the first chapter, and also in the first chapter he returns home from the Western Front in France, paralyzed from the waist down, which means that they will not be able to have children because he is impotent. Sir Clifford is not too downtrodden by this whole situation, and he tells Connie that if she wants to, she can have an affair with other men, and if she has a son, then he would raise this son to be the heir to Ragby, his family estate. Connie does have an affair with some other men of her own social station, but eventually the one who sticks is Oliver Mellors, who works as a gamekeeper at Ragby. And an employee was probably not exactly what Sir Clifford had in mind. Now, full disclosure, I picked this book up 100% because of its reputation. D.H. Lawrence had a really hard time finding a publisher for this. He couldn't find one in the United Kingdom, so he had it published in Italy eventually, and then smuggled copies back into his home country. And that is because of the frank sexual nature of some of the scenes, and this was eventually put on trial for indecency because of too many instances of the words fuck and cunt. And I think D.H. Lawrence was really upset by the way his book was being treated because he was not writing it to be pornographic. The sex scenes in this book are not scintillating. He was writing about sex as like a natural human thing, which he thinks is, healthy for body and mind, and it's not a dirty thing, it's a clean thing, and thus any words used to describe it are also clean, so why not use words like fuck and cunt if that is what you are talking about. But I will tell you who is really happy that such a hoopla was made about Lady Chatterley's lover, and that, though he may not know it, is Albert fucking Camus. I say that because this book is not what I expected it to be. It is not a sex-positive cross-class romance. This book is a primer on existentialism. And if you could get away with having high schoolers read this in class, this is the book you would use instead of The Stranger in order to introduce kids to existentialism. But because of its reputation, if Billy comes home and says, hey mom, we're reading Lady Chatterley's Lover in my 10th grade class, the parents will lose their shit. Even though the actual portrayals of sex are not much more intense than what was in books that I read in high school, I was assigned Perfume and, what was the other one? The Handmaid's Tale in 11th grade. And this, I think, has slightly more paragraphs about sex than those two, but the sex is like way healthier and less, she's gonna judgmentally say, weird than the sex in those two books. But no, we cannot read this in high school because it has a reputation, so we must instead use The Stranger, even though Albert Camus specifically said, guys, I am not an existentialist, please don't call me an existentialist. And I have read The Stranger, I've studied it twice, once in English, once in French, and I do understand what existentialism is, and I don't really see how The Stranger relates to existentialism. I mean, it relates a little bit, but this one explains existentialism way better. So in case you don't know, I shall now explain existentialism, and I will also explain two other worldviews along with it because it helps to understand them all together. So there's nihilism, existentialism, and absurdism. And existentialism rests on some conclusions of nihilism, and absurdism rests on some conclusions of existentialism. So nihilism is the assertion that there is no purpose to our lives. There is no, God with a plan for us. There may be a God, but definitely not one with a plan for us. The universe does not have a plan for us. Nothing like that. There is no purpose to our lives. That's all nihilism says. Existentialism takes that premise and adds to it that, and therefore, we should do whatever makes us happy. We can choose our own direction in life and pursue our own meaning. Absurdism takes the position of existentialism and adds to it that in addition to pursuing our own meaning in life, we should also declare war on the universe for being nihilistic and attempt to thwart it, and that should be part of our attempt at creating meaning. And in Lady Chatterley's Lover, time and time again, we see various characters attempt to follow a predetermined societal route for happiness. And regardless of whether or not they are successful, does not actually leave them feeling any happier. And so D.H. Lawrence is saying, you just gotta make up your own shit, guys, and then do that. Which I think is great, and was also quite surprising, because as I said, I was expecting more of like a cross-class romance being the focus. But this book, this edition, is a little over 300 pages. Oliver Mellors is not a character for the first 100 pages. You're just hearing about Connie and Clifford's life together. And then he's like barely a character for about the next 100 pages. So it's only in the final third that like it's actually about Connie and Oliver. Now, even though I may have tricked you into believing otherwise, I don't feel like I fully got this book. A lot of characters say a lot of things which sound very meaningful, and I couldn't really decide who, if anyone, was representing the voice of D.H. Lawrence. I eventually decided to just take all of the character statements as only reflective of the character and not reflective of the author, because this is the first work by D.H. Lawrence that I have read. I feel like you will get a lot more out of this if this is not the first book of his that you read. This is one of his later novels. He'd written several others before this. So I want to revisit Lady Chatterley's Lover after reading The Rainbow, Women in Love, and Love in a Cold Climate. Did I just name a Nancy Mitford novel? It is a Nancy Mitford novel. I meant to say Sons and Lovers. I can't keep track of all of this love and where it's happening and with who. Anyway, Lady Chatterley's Lover. Interesting, surprising, maybe not the best place to start with D.H. Lawrence. I'm giving it a tentative 4 stars, although, you know, it could totally end up being a 5 or 2 after I read this with increased context. Okay, thank you for watching. See you later, guys.